is a huge spectator sport. Of course, MMA has replaced some of its appeal. In fairly recent past, what I remember is the biggest pay-per-view audience was Tyson Holyfield 1, and then Tyson Holyfield 2. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And it was, at the time, and I'm sure it's been eclipsed since, but Tyson had the biggest payday of any fight up to date. Holyfield had the biggest payday of any fight to date. The pay-per-view audience was the biggest fight for any boxing match in history. And now the question is if it was such a fabulous spectator event and everybody in the country more or less was watching this, did it have a boom or any impact at all on people who teach boxing the following week? I don't think it made any difference whatsoever, right?
I see when there's a good fight on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have a Sunday intro class. It's a free class every Sunday, and when there's a big fight on Saturday night, I'll see a little spike.
Okay.
But I don't know. I think people that go into boxing gyms and MMA gyms, I think they like the idea, but they don't really know what they want. They don't know that they want a martial arts studio. They just think that they should go and get in a gym.
See,
okay.
For me, it's actually probably saving my school right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, because my original background's in Taekwondo and Karate, so we have a belt structure. They wear uniforms, etc. But we teach an MMA style curriculum. We do kickboxing and submission grappling. So the whole MMA boom right now is getting more adults to come looking. Mm-hmm. I don't put karate on the ads anymore. I either put martial arts or mixed martial arts. Mm-hmm. But when they come, we enroll them in like regular students for a black belt program.
And it's better. It's much better.
So I would say for me, I have noticed huge in the number of adults coming. We always get kids.
Yeah.
But a number of adults coming looking for martial arts training and... And just converting them into our black belt curriculum has actually saved my school from just being terrible right now.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's
I look at the MMA as being like when Nana first brought out kickboxing. Mm-hmm. What's hot now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then those that teach great and have a great program will keep them.
Mm-hmm.
Those that won't will dwindle fast.
Right.
Seems like too there's no value system or philosophy with the MMA, and it's just like it's more like a gym feeling.
Yeah, you got to implement that, or it's just
if you don't have
people. There's no loyalty at all. They're just like they're in it and they're out like 2 months later. It's like,
exactly. Well, let me give you 3 ways to think about it. Here is what are the biggest spectator sports in the United States right now?
Football, NASCAR.
Right.
Those are the 2 biggest probably.
So football, NASCAR. UFC is
they're
up there,
huge,
right? Yeah. They're up there. So, there is no grassroots school activity for NASCAR, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a few little things where guys like I can go. I went to Miami Raceway, Toby and I, and drove the cars. But I mean, there's no grassroots school going on.
Mullets started in Taekwondo Studios.
What's that?
I think Mullets started in Taekwondo Studios.
Yeah. And there's very little grassroots now. There's an elementary, middle school, high school, but football. The biggest grassroots activity in the United States for kids is soccer, right?
Yeah.
And soccer may be a big international spectator sport in the U.S. They can't get an audience, right? We actually went. There's a huge soccer stadium in Denver. I guess the biggest in the country now, and we went, but everybody was there to watch the fireworks. Nobody cared about the game. I don't even know who they were playing. And so what you got to realize is having a big spectator audience doesn't necessarily translate to it being a grassroots activity that people are looking for, right? All the NASCAR fans, they want to have all the crap up on their walls, and they have a nice garage, and maybe if they really get going, they get a Charger or something like that and paint it up. But they're not out racing on the weekends. And so the first thing is just because there's a big spectator audience doesn't mean there's a participant audience, right?
Agreed.
The second thing is if you think in very general terms of there being let's say a 12 and under kids market, then a adult male 18 to 32 market, and then an adult 35 and up market, to make it real simple, is the market that pays their bills that I want. And keep in mind, in the late 70s and early 80s, we had mostly 20 to 35-year-old adults. I mean, when I started, I talk about doing 5 schools in 18 months, having 1,500 students. Well, they were 80% adults, right? It wasn't kids. I mean, the kids market came in with Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got to tell you from experience, you know, the 27-year-olds don't pay their bills, and they don't have great retention, and if I have a choice between a 7-year-old and a 27-year-old, I want the 7-year-old. And part of what happened, I think, is some people longed for a return to the adult market who had never been successful with the adult market. Right? Now think about that for a second. Because it's one thing to say, I want to have a bunch of adults because back when I was just a hobbyist part-time, I had some adults that I liked to spar with, and now I don't have as many of those as I'd like. It's something else completely different to say, like in my case, I ran a $2 million operation with 80% adults, and I never want to go back to that because the kids' market pays their bills, and the parents, you know, hold them accountable and everything else. So one of the things you've got to think about is what's the better audience for us that's more likely to pay their bills, more likely to pay higher rates, etc. And I say it's the 12 and under crowd, and it's the 35 and up crowd. And the demographic that is making UFC is the Maxim magazine crowd, is the Budweiser crowd, and they buy lots of stuff, right? It's the iTunes crowd, it's the iPod crowd, it's an iPhone crowd, but it's not necessarily the ones that we want as regular students in our school, right? The other aspect of it is, and it's not stylistic, is, see, like in our case, we've been teaching MMA since the 60s, right? I mean, back in the 60s, everybody, you know, not everybody, but a lot of us started with judo. Pretty much all the instructors early on were judo or jiu-jitsu black belts and taekwondo or whatever. Bill Wallace started with wrestling, and then he trained in judo, and then he trained in Okinawan style martial arts. Jeff Smith won the first MMA fights. It was right after the PK championship, so it was 76 or 77 or something like that. So none of that stuff is new. See, all that's new about it is not the curriculum, it's the spectator sport, right? And now the athletes in the spectator sport are these foul-mouthed, 28 tattoos, blue-collar type of guys. And what has happened, and you said one thing which I think is right, one thing which I think is wrong. When the cardio kickboxing thing came up, right? And we experimented with it, ran a program in one of the schools. I had a school that was 6,400 square feet, but 3,200 on one floor, 3,200 on the other floor, and had separate entrances. So we ran a like 300 or 400 person kickboxing program in that. But the reason I was convinced of that is we were getting like 40 or 50 calls a month asking if we done kickboxing. Okay? And I thought, well, if we're getting 40 or 50 free info calls a month, not even advertising it, what could happen if we advertised a little bit, and let's try that out. Well, how many calls a month are we getting asking if we teach MMA or UFC? We don't get any. We don't get any, okay? And there may be a few of the dads of the kids that come in who are interested in learning that. I don't think any of the moms of the kids that come in are interested in learning that. So it's possible to get them interested, but there's not 30, 40, 50 info calls a month coming in looking for it, right? So, I mean, Billy Blanks drove the kickboxing industry, right? He had millions of dollars going out on what was an infomercial for doing cardio kickboxing, and everybody was looking for it. And he was selling DVDs, but a lot of people wanted to, like, you know, train with human beings. But this isn't the same thing, right? See, this isn't driving, I want to be a participant. This is driving, I want to sit and, you know, have a beer and eat pizza and hang out with my friends and watch, you know, this guy kick this guy's butt, right? You know, it's kind of like, to me, the Roman gladiators, you know, just because they had them in the Colosseum didn't mean the people in the audience wanted to be out there, right? So I think you've got to one, separate the fact that it's a spectator sport from the fact of whether it is or isn't driving participant interest. And cardio kickboxing was driven by people are looking for some place to teach it to them, right? This isn't it's not that. There's not people, you know, out there looking to be taught. The other thing, what you said is exactly right. If you don't maintain, they're wearing a uniform and they're barefoot, or they're wearing the type of whatever things you want them to wear. If you don't have them bowing in and bowing